Hey there, I'm Becky, and welcome to Literary Escapes with me, Becky.
Thanks for joining me today as we talk about all kinds of great bookish escapes. Today I have the pleasure of talking with author Katy Berritt. If you enjoy romantic comedies that are a little quirky, you're going to want to listen to this one. So let's jump right in. Katy Berritt, welcome to the Literary Escapes podcast. I'm excited to have you here today.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. It was exciting to be able to look at your website and see what you write, because I love romantic comedies. I think they are probably my favorite to read, especially the last couple of years.
Well, yeah, I think, that's the thing. And I've had a lot of people tell me the same thing, that in the last couple of years, they don't want to read anything real heavy.
I agree.
It's been such a rough couple of years in so many different ways for so many people. They just want to read something lighthearted that makes them laugh and has a happy ending.
Exactly. And that's romantic comedies. You're guaranteed some fun. You're guaranteed a happy ending. And
yeah, well, all romance has the one criteria for romance is it has to have a happy ending. But there's so many different kinds of romance out there. There's romance for every possible type of reader. Not everybody necessarily is looking for laughter, but I think in the last couple of years, there's a lot of people looking for some laughter.
There's a lot of us that needed it. Yep. I agree.
And fortunately, I like writing it.
Well, that's awesome. So how did you get into writing?
Well, I've been writing since I was a little kid. Like, I think I wrote my first story, like a real story, with, of course, myself as the hero. And of course, we always are the heroines of our own stories, really, when you get down. We should be, exactly. I mean, why not?
Yes.
It was maybe 10 or 11.
Okay.
But, this was before word processing. Yeah. And I say in my bio, the only thing I got out of it was on this finger right here. I have a permanent callus.
Exactly.
From holding that pencil so tightly. But I will tell you that when I was in 8th grade, I had a teacher who I'm sure is not around anymore, Mrs. Chase, who actually wrote on a paper that I wrote, "Someday I expect to read a book that you wrote."
Yay.
So I've always been a writer, but I never made any kind of serious attempt at it until two things happened. First one was word processing.
Yay. And that's come a long way, thankfully.
Yes. When I was in high school, I purposely didn't take a typing class because I was afraid if I did, I would automatically get, because you have to remember, this is back, I was afraid I would get permanently slotted as a secretary, and right. I didn't want to be a secretary. And so I just didn't take typing. So I'm a terrible typist. And thank God for word processing, because it knows I'm a terrible typist. And it says all the time.
Well, my son is a terrible typist, and he's 19 years old right now. And his theory is that the same thing. I don't have to be because it fixes it for me.
That's exactly right. It's like, and even if it doesn't fix it, it underlines it in blue and says, "Hey, you better take a look at this one again because I screwed up." Anyway, so that was the first thing. And I thought, well, this is handy. But then I got laid off from my job.
Oh.
Okay. And this was one of my sort of interim things. I've been a financial advisor most of my life, but I had a period of time there where I was still in the same industry, but I wasn't an advisor. I was working on the corporate side. And on the corporate side, the problem with working on the corporate side, they can lay you off.
Yeah.
They don't do that when you're an advisor unless you suck. And
exactly. Oy.
So that wasn't so good. But anyway, you can only look for a job so many hours in the day. You just can't look 8 hours a day.
Well, there's only so many jobs out there. So
well, correct. And and I did a lot of networking, and I called people and got referrals, who can I talk to? But you can just only do that so many hours in the day. And so I decided, what am I going to sit here and watch soap operas? No, I don't think so. Not into soap operas. So I said, well, you know what? I'll just write a book. So I wrote a book.
That's so funny. I love it.
I know,
Huh.
and I wrote something that was this historical. And so a lot of my time, and this was the other thing that was good because at the time the internet was just getting going.
Okay.
And so I could do research, although I did buy some books. I I chose a period nobody's ever going to publish, the English Civil War.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, tremendous. It'll never get published. But it really developed a love for actually creating a story for me. And so when I went back to work, because my company called me back to work, I don't know why they bothered laying me off. My job wasn't 100% time consuming. And so I wrote some more.
Nice. Okay.
And that's how I got started.
So the historical didn't get published.
I didn't even try.
So
It wasn't
what, say again?
It wasn't worth trying to publish.
Well, that's the first books that I've heard that from more than one author. The first book's kind of yeah.
Well, here's the thing, we're talking about romantic comedy. And I wrote that historical, and I wrote a suspense novel that takes place in the financial industry. But my psyche, unfortunately, no matter how grim the subject is, somehow or other my sense of humor kind of leaks in. And so it's not that good an idea to have something where there's murder and mayhem going on and I'm making a joke.
Right. Well, it seems like you've probably found your niche then.
Yeah, I think so.
So from that first historical novel to when you got published, which was this year,
Mhm.
what was that, and how many books were in between?
So I have one historical novel that I got within one chapter of being done and then didn't finish it. I don't know why.
You've already
It's
done all the
actually
hard work, Ollie.
I know. I don't know why I didn't finish it. Someday I may. It's a Regency, and I think that's why I didn't finish it, is because it was the only Regency idea I ever had.
Okay.
And when you write Regency, they expect more
They
Regency.
do want more, yeah.
They do want more. And so I just wasn't sure what the next book could be. Then I wrote two, and these again probably are not publishable. Okay. I wrote two romantic comedies that are Westerns. Okay. But they're not contemporary Westerns. They're historical romantic comedy Westerns in the 1890s. So I don't know that there's a market for that.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, they're fun. They're both fun books. They're romantic comedies. I've written, okay. Now here's an example of how bizarre my sense of humor is. I finished last year a romantic comedy in the Depression.
That's you find interesting time frames to set your comedies. I love that.
Nothing funny about the Depression, but I found a lot of humor in it.
Well, I think that that's one of the gifts in life, is to be able to find humor in tough situations
and everything. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, it's not the situation so much, although there's certainly parts in there that it is a situation that I've made fun of. It's people.
Yeah.
People, the world is full of so many strange people.
Well, and thank God for that when you're a writer, right?
I mean, there's so many people that are either purposely funny, but I find the people who are inadvertently funny just wonderful to write about. So I wrote those three plus the Regency. So what is that? That's four. And then I wrote the first of my Heart series, which has 2 follow-up books. And then I wrote a book called Lucky's Lady about a veterinarian who's been married 5 times.
Okay, wow.
And then I have a book that I'm working on right now, which, fingers crossed, I think I might get a contract on. I'm hoping to hear very shortly.
Nice.
And if I do, it'll be the first of a series of total 6 books.
Nice. Boy, that would be awesome, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would be very awesome. I
Very
would love
cool.
that.
So it sounds like you are traditionally published. Is that
Correct.
okay?
But the Westerns that I told you about, I may self-publish those
Cool.
because it's, like I said, it would be very hard to find a market for them. They're really well written. They're fun books. They've got a lot of humor in them. They've got a lot of pathos. Is that how you say that word? Pathos? Pathos?
Yeah.
I have to look it up. You know, I mean, all my books have, I always intend my books to have a lot of humor, but I also want them to have a lot of heart.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I don't just write for jokes.
Punchline. Yeah.
The punchline, exactly. I want people to, I want there to be things in the book that people go, oh God, that's just awful. Oh, I just feel for that poor person.
Yeah.
You know, and then of course there's other sex.
Yeah, you have to have a good story and you have to have good
Correct.
characters. I think regardless of what genre you're in. And
Correct.
the
Yeah,
humor helps it along, but it shouldn't, it's never going to be the story.
well, it's you know, as I said, there's a lot of different levels of romance books that range from inspirational up to erotica.
Right.
And you know, inspirational is like, my God, they didn't even touch hands. And erotica is just nothing about the sex. And that doesn't appeal to me either.
Right.
I mean, my books certainly are steamy, but my books are very plot heavy.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Okay. Almost all my books, for some reason, don't ask me why, almost all my books somehow or other end up having some kind of crime involved.
I've noticed that, yeah, which is so interesting. I was telling you earlier, I thought when I first started looking through your book and your blogs and all that, I thought you were a cozy mystery writer. But you self-identified as romantic comedy.
Yeah,
So,
no, I don't. Yeah, I mean,
wait a minute.
cozy mysteries don't have any sex in them.
Okay, okay.
Okay. At least, and I read a fair amount of cozy mysteries, always the ones that have to do with, and the book that I just have now, if it gets published, you'll see. Because I make fun of them. I make fun of a lot of things. There's a lot of different kinds of cozy mysteries, and some of them are like knitting groups and things like that.
Right.
But the ones that I like are the ones that have animals involved, and the animals always have magically some kind of extraordinary powers where
Mhm.
they can talk or they can solve crimes or whatever. And I
Right.
make fun of that in the book that I'm working on right now. So like, even though I like to read that genre, it wouldn't be something that I would write
Right.
because
Okay.
it's first of all, it doesn't usually have the level of humor that I like. And it doesn't have sex.
Gotta have sex.
Have the sex, exactly. But there's sexes in a book. I don't know how other people are, like the erotica people. They really like books where it's just like real heavy on the sex part,
Right.
Down and dirty, gritty, goes on forever. But most of the people that I know, I don't know how you are, if it goes on too long, I start skipping pages.
Yeah, that's how I am. And I prefer books that are more plot heavy and
Yeah.
versus, yeah. So
Yeah, and my mind just sort of works that way, which is one of the reasons I wrote a suspense novel, because it's a mystery. And I have in mind a bunch of others that I could write, but I've just had a lot more interest and success with talking to people about my romantic comedies. If I live
Right.
long enough, maybe I'll try to get my suspense novels published.
Well, that's the beauty of self-publishing, huh?
Yeah, I could. Yeah, that's correct. I could do that.
Yeah.
So,
So, well, good luck on that one. I'm curious to see when all these different things are going to come out because you've got a lot of
it's,
really interesting
it's
plots
all
going
sitting
on
in a
there.
file somewhere.
Well, get them out in the world.
Exactly.
So it sounds like let's talk a little bit about the Candy Papers.
Okay.
That's not a series, right? It's just a one-off. Is that
It's a one-off, yeah.
okay? Okay.
When I
So and
wrote that, when I wrote that, series kind of weren't a thing, at all.
okay, okay.
I mean, I
That's
wrote that years
interesting
ago. Yeah,
because
when I went
they
to,
are really popular right now, aren't though?
they
Which
are
is
very, very,
interesting.
very
Yeah,
popular. Publishers like them, readers like them. I like them.
yeah.
Okay.
I do too.
But they just, I mean, I wrote that book 20 years ago.
That's awesome.
When I
I love
went to
how
send it, go in and add things like the internet.
that's I was that's funny. Plots are timeless though for the most part, right? I mean, that's
Thoughts don't go away. Humor doesn't go away, but
yeah.
things like cell phones, you know.
That's so interesting. Yeah. That's go and make it more modern. I love that. So tell us what that book is about.
So I'll tell you, well, actually, I won't tell you why I came up with the idea. It's a little complicated. When people say what kind of book is it, what I say to them is it's either a romantic comedy wrapped up in a murder mystery, or it's a murder mystery wrapped up in a romantic comedy.
That works.
Because I'm not quite sure. But the theme of the book is that Candace, my heroine, is the stepdaughter of a guy who owns a company, very much like Godiva chocolate.
Mm,
Okay. It's worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And her mother was the guy who owns the company was Fred Jones.
okay.
And Candace's mother, Wendy, was Fred's second wife. Fred was a serial marrier guy. Okay. And five wives.
Okay.
But anyway, she and her when her stepfather and her mother divorced, she's working for him by that time at the company, and he's always promised that when he dies that he will leave her in charge of the company because his son ticked him off by not wanting to work in the chocolate industry and went off and started his own saltwater taffy making empire.
Okay.
Okay. So he disinherits his son and tells Candace he's going to leave her the company. Only then she walks in one day and finds him murdered in his Barker lounger,
Oh my.
and finds out at the reading of the will that he didn't do what he said. He left the company to his son, Gabe, but he left the recipe to their chocolate to her.
Oh,
Okay, so now they've kind of got
interesting little twist.
yep, and now the assets are split. However, when they go to open the box, the lockbox where the recipe is hidden, it's disappeared.
Bum, bum,
So
bum.
the book basically is them having to team up together to see if they can't find the recipe and at the same time try to solve Fred's murder.
Right.
So that's
How
the theme of
fun.
the book.
That's awesome. That sounds like a fun one.
Well, they're not very good investigators, and that's where the humor comes in.
I love
They're
that.
particularly inept.
That's pretty awesome. And this is in New York City, is that correct?
It takes place in New York City, correct?
Awesome. Okay.
Not all my
So,
books, this one does.
okay. So some of your other books, like the one that you're working on now, what is that one called?
It's called The Matchler.
Okay. And where's that one take place at?
Well, he's from New York City. It takes place I don't know, like 60 miles away from Tallahassee.
Oh, okay. So up north. Okay.
Correct.
Nice. That's a pretty area. That's
It's a
the
very
only part
pretty
of
area.
Florida where there's hills.
Correct. That's exactly. But there's also apparently quite a bit of swampy area as well,
Yeah,
which
that's
is
pretty much all over Florida.
yeah, pretty much. That's what I understand. And I've been through Tallahassee, and I remember Tallahassee, very pretty city.
Mhm.
Um, but I've never spent any significant time there other than just kind of driving through. When I was a
Yeah.
kid, my dad was in the army, so when I was a kid, we drove all over the place.
Yeah. So The Bachelor, what is that one? What's the premise behind that book?
The premise behind that is a baseball player who plays in the minor leagues. And I don't know if you know anything about the minor leagues. They make crap money.
Okay,
I
I
mean,
believe it. Okay.
you couldn't even feed a chipmunk on what they make.
Yikes.
They make like $7,000 or $8,000 a year, and they work really hard.
Holy
Um,
moly.
so the reason they do it is they hope to get called up to the majors, where then they can actually make a living.
Right. Wow.
Um, and so he's been playing in the minors because he wants to get called up, but he makes his money. He's gorgeous. He makes his money modeling.
Oh, okay.
Um, and he gets called up for a tryout, and he gets to try out at a game. And while he's there, he asks if he can propose to his girlfriend right before one of the games. You know how they have like, will you marry me on the
Yeah,
Jumbotron?
yeah.
So he asked if he can do that, and because this may, this is his shot. So they said, yeah, sure, go ahead. So he arranges the whole thing. Only unfortunately, when the camera's on her, she's making out with another guy.
Oh no.
So
Oh, I
he's
love it.
he's so devastated, he blows his shot with the team,
Uh-huh.
and he loses his modeling career because nobody wants to hire a guy who got dumped on national television.
Oh my.
That he's the face of ridicule. Um,
Right. Oi.
so his agent lines him up with the only gig that he can line him up with, a reality show called The Bachelor, figuring that if he can show the world on this show that he's like still hot stuff.
Yeah, not a loser.
Yes, it's like a riff on The Bachelor, that he'll regain his sex symbol status and he'll be able to get his career back as a model at least. Baseball's done. Only unfortunately, the show is a front for drug smuggling.
Jeez. Oh, that's
And he doesn't
awesome.
fall in love with any of the contestants. He falls in love with this little short, skinny, redheaded girl who is the girl in charge, who's the set electrician, basically.
Oh, how funny. I love it. That sounds like a
So
fun
that's what
one.
it's about. And if it gets published and they allow me to write the successive stories, it'll be about some of the contestants on the show. The first one I've already started,
Fun.
and the contestants are kind of bottom of the barrel kind of contestants for the most part. So the first one's about the girl who's a mortician.
Oh, I love it. That should be interesting.
Yeah, I know I have a writing group that I belong to, and when I submitted my first chapter, one of the girls didn't say anything for a long time, and then she said, well, I don't think I've ever read anything quite like this.
That's a good thing, right?
Well, because the police bring in this guy who's dead into the mortuary. They found him in a field naked, dead. Only it turns out when she's had him in there a little while and he thaws out that he's not dead.
Oh, well, that's an
Um,
important thing to know.
yeah, exactly. But but he was whacked on the head, so now he doesn't remember anything. He doesn't know who he is anymore. He has amnesia, which is, it's such
That's a
a
fun
terrible.
trope. Yeah, I love that.
Exactly.
That's a fun one.
Yeah.
That's
So anyway, that's the second book. And the other ones will be all about ones that are real interesting characters.
awesome. Well, that's fun. I hope that
Yeah, I hope so.
The
I've got my
Bachelor
fingers
gets picked up
crossed. We'll
and
see.
all of those are forthcoming because that sounds like a really fun series.
If not, I'll self-publish,
That's exactly right. And it's so nice for authors these days that that's an option.
Yeah, yeah, it's not easy. I haven't quite figured out how I would go about it, but I do have people that have done it who can help me walk through it and
Right.
figure it out.
That's awesome. So, what are you reading right now?
Oh, I'm reading, I actually just finished, well, I'm actually in the middle of reading a Stephanie Plum book, and
Oh, those are
I've read
fun.
three because I somehow or other missed when they came out. I really like the Stephanie Plum series.
Yeah, I like Janet Ivanovich. She's got a
Mhm.
funny sense of
Yeah,
humor as well.
even her non-Stephanie Plum. I've bought a lot of her non-Stephanie Plum
Yeah,
books, pre-Stephanie, the Plum books,
right.
when she was writing romantic comedy.
Yeah,
And I buy a lot of those on audiobook so that I can listen to them when I exercise.
that's a
They're
fun way
really
to do
fun
it.
to exercise too. One of the things that's nice about her books is her writing has a certain cadence, which just lends itself to humor.
Right.
She writes like da like that. There's this cadence to her books.
Interesting. Okay.
And when you read it, you'll see what I'm saying. She
I'll have to do
frequently
that. Yeah.
lines. She just lets the humor stand for itself in the dialogue.
Interesting. I like it. That's funny. So, where do you hang out online where readers can hang out with you? Or do you hang out online where readers can hang out with you?
I have my website, katyberritt.com, which is KatyBerritt.
Okay.
Okay. And all my blogs are posted there. And my blogs, I bet you read them.
I did. Yeah. They were fun.
They are fun. Yeah. They're a lot of fun. I have my Facebook, which is Katy Berritt Author.
Okay.
And then I just started a newsletter, which goes out once a month.
Oh, nice.
And I'm trying to get people to sign up for that. The other thing that I'm doing is I'm just about to finish a short story, and I'm not a short story writer because plots take time
Right.
to unfold.
Yeah. To be able to do it in like 30,000 words or less is impressive.
Yeah, it's not easy. Usually when you find like novellas and short stories, they're not very plot heavy. They're usually
Yeah.
very simple. Boy meets girl, girl and boy have fight.
Moves pretty
Girl
quickly. Yeah.
boy and girl makeup kind of stories. Not a lot of plot going on. And so in my mind just thinks plot. But there's this thing, I don't know if you're familiar with it, called Book Funnel.
I've heard of it. Yeah. Not sure
Yeah,
exactly
Book
what
Funnel
it is.
apparently. I just learned about it, but it's apparently this device where you can get subscribers to your newsletter so that you can turn them on more to what's going on, with new publishing and stuff like
Gotcha.
that.
Okay.
But you have to, in order to get people to sign up for your newsletter, you kind of have to offer them something for free.
Gotcha.
And I could offer them a couple chapters from the Candy Capers, which I may do eventually, but I decided to just go ahead and write a short story.
Cool.
And so I'm thinking I should be done with that, knock on wood. Depends on what happens with the Bachelor situation.
Right.
I should be done with that. Actually maybe today. And then I'll send that out shortly and see if I can get some more people to subscribe to my newsletter.
Excellent. Well, I will put a link to your website, your Facebook page, and your newsletter is on the website, right?
Pretty sure there's a thing for the newsletter.
Okay. Well, Katy, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been a lot of fun talking to you.
Thanks for joining me today on the Literary Escape podcast. If you enjoy hearing the behind the book story, then join me in the Literary Escape Society. We're a community of travelers who love books, or maybe book lovers who love to travel. Either way, if you need an escape, a literary escape, come join us as we read our way around the world together, one book at a time. Check out the show notes to learn more about the Literary Escape Society. And we'll see you next time on the next episode.